We get this whole contraption figured out here. Hang on just a second. Get this back where it was. I think that's where it was. Is that where it was? Is that better? I think that's better. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. There's my palm of my hand there. All right. Get to yammering on here. What's happening, everybody? All right. So, figured I would open up the topic this evening, kind of fantail some of the other live chats that we've had, and quite honestly, it's been a running theme with a lot of folks when it comes to the EV topic. With Stellantis, which is the new owning partner, I guess you could say, partnership, that's owning FCA, which obviously there was a big stink about SRT going away and so many other things like that had everybody kind of a little bit freaked out. A little bit of the sky is falling type of a phenomenon was taking place. And throughout the course of that, one of the things that was said was that, hey, Ben's in, got the arm flex and the thumbs up. I like it. One of the things that was brought up was, SRT is going away, which it really isn't, and that we're going to be looking at the end of supercharged V8s as we know them. And the big issue here is it was the Hellcat platform that was really targeted in that statement. Basically, it was saying that the days of the supercharged V8 are basically on their way out. And I think a lot of people took that in a weird way. But one of the weird ways that they took it was that EV was going to be taking the place of the supercharged V8s. And so I'm not really the type of guy that gets upset about that. I think that we're on the very bottom floor of what EVs can actually do. And I know a lot of folks have range anxiety, and there's a few other things that come up from a practical point of view that I can understand. There are some points to be made that gasoline, or internal combustion for that matter, has and probably always will have a leg up. But again, you've got to remember that we're talking about compromises. This is very much a boxing match between EV guys and internal combustion guys. But this is a funny scenario where the pros for EV versus the pros for internal combustion, you can actually break down performance numbers pretty objectively. And it's interesting when you look at what can go wrong. Basically, I guess you could say the opportunity cost of owning a internal combustion engine. And what I mean by opportunity cost is opportunity for things to just flat out break. Trying to throw more boost at it and pop a ring land or ventilate the block or blow up your transmission. Injectors going bad, worried about fuel quality, always jacking around with contraptions like this. Handy dandy density altitude calculator. What's the car going to run like? You get the idea. Y'all see where I'm going with this. All issues that you don't have to worry about with an electric vehicle. And it's funny also too, because this isn't the first time that folks had been a little bit weirded out by a change in the guard of the type of power plant that they were going to be working with. And again, a lot of folks I think were concerned with, and by the way, this channel, the monologues are always full of sidebar, me just kind of going off into a tangent and coming back on point. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe, all of that, but that's just kind of how the live chats work. Usually the monologue will start, I'll run the monologue forever how long it goes, and I'll start taking questions. So anyway, getting back to it, this isn't the first time that a power plant was up for debate. So you had, before there was anything, you had horses, and when steam engines came out, it was, well, the steam engine can't ever compete with a horse, and we all know how that went. And then it was diesel, and then it was, oh, well, how are you going to get fuel? And there's no way you can ever power this thing long distances and all of this other stuff. Well, that's just an infrastructure issue. That's foreshadowing, by the way, for EVs. Then it was every other issue that you had with gasoline, type engines, rotaries. You had turbine engines at one time that they were trying to bring into the mix. Two-stroke, four-stroke, forced induction. Then you get into the fuel economy issues. And each time that there was a change, there was always their protractors and detractors for each type of a platform. This is no different than that. But the funny thing about this conversation is that it always somehow seems to get politicized. Nobody ever politicized a rotary engine, whether it's rotary radial or actual rotary pissed off Dorito type of engine. So the interesting thing here is just how weird this whole argument got. And it turned, some folks are trying to turn it political and all this other stuff. And I'm looking at it as somebody who's always also been kind of into RC stuff. And I'm thinking, damn, you know, all of my RC kit, it's all electric. You know, I don't mess with nitro because electric smokes nitro. You know, why is it that people are so weird about this? This is just, to me, a natural progression. So I don't know. I think that it's kind of strange, but I've found that there seems to be a lot of hate for the electrical vehicle concept. And the strange thing about that is this is coming from a lot of folks that were probably, or have obviously never driven or ridden in one of these electric cars. If you haven't, I suggest before you table an argument against EV, you need to go for a ride in one of these things. You need to drive one of these things. And even the more pedestrian versions of the EVs are unbelievably quick by comparison. Just the response is instant. And by the way, all of these characteristics are just infinitely tunable, realistically. So you can tune this thing to make it act pretty much however you want. It is the ultimate in personalization when it comes to drive ability, tuning, everything like that. So it's just strange to me that more folks aren't gravitating and really wanting to explore this new, at least new to us today, power plant. Because you have to remember, and I keep bringing this up and folks just always seem to forget, back in the 1880s, 1890s, when internal combustion was really just starting to kind of get developed, and you had all kinds of different types of cars, if you will. They were basically just powered buggies. But you had steam, you had gasoline, you had electric. And at the time, all of them made around 3 horsepower if they were doing really well. So they were all more or less in the same boat as far as power was concerned. And you know, it really wasn't until ironically, the electric starter motor that made gasoline the go-to power plant. And really, once you started to take the sense of range and things like that into account, it really started to get big. But even back then, they were running gasoline or diesel engines to turn generators to spin electric motors to make trains go down the track. So this is really, the whole hybrid thing is nothing new in terms of being an actual power plant. The whole electric vehicle thing is absolutely nothing new. In fact, they were pretty popular in the earlier on days. There was really no reason to own a gasoline powered vehicle. They sucked. They're hard to start, cantankerous, didn't want to run, got terrible, fuel economy numbers, the whole bit. Whereas this other thing, it would just run on a DC motor and it'd get you around just like a glorified golf cart. Pretty cool. So anyway, fast forward to today, and we've got these quote unquote, glorified golf carts that'll run mid 11-second quarter mile times, and that's just for the more pedestrian versions of it. But in some of the other live talks, so I'm kind of circling back around here. So get back to some of the live chats. For some of you guys that are upset that gasoline hot rods from the factory are going away, I guess my question to you is why? Are you worried about the cars that you have now, or if you've got a classic or something like that, are you worried about being able to buy gasoline? Because let me tell you something, gasoline will be available for a long time. It's not going away. This is just going to be basically the world plus electric vehicles, what you know now plus electric vehicles. And where it makes sense, the market will dictate how those vehicles sell. And so far, the market's kind of saying it's pretty cool. And as the economies of scale drag the cost to the consumer down on those products, and by the way, economy of scale is just a fancy way of saying as they make more of them. It's just a term that fart sniffers like me will use every once in a while. Anyway, when the economies of scale drag the cost down, folks will start to look at EVs a lot more favorably. They're going to become a lot more easily accepted. Oh, Ed Star's in. Thank you very much, Ed, saying the all-electric future is not so clear. Issues about grid capacity, battery sustainability, and total system costs mean the big switch won't be easy. And Ed's right. Ed's got a good point. Battery sustainability is one thing. The grid, you'd be surprised. The grid itself, I know the engineering explained did a pretty good job. He can do a better job than I can of explaining to you the grid capacity. But realistically, even if you were to make every vehicle in the United States 100% electric, you would still have another, he was saying roughly 6 years. I'm going to say realistically, because I kind of know how, these bureaucracies work, but you'd probably be looking at about 10 to 12 years of actual infrastructure investment to be able to sustain a substantial percentage of an electric fleet. But as it sits right now, the grid's not going to get stung by, what amounts to maybe a 5% or 10% increase in actual draw. There's actually significant overages in there, although we wouldn't know it down here in Texas with all of our grid shutting down because the temperature got a little burr rabbit down here. Anyway, but no, Ed's got a really good point with that. Battery sustainability. Here's the thing. I'm going to agree with you on that, Ed. I'm going to take that a step further, though. So this is why I don't like the idea of the electric vehicle being politicized. It takes an absolute insane amount of energy to produce a battery. In other words, the mining, the refining, the actual making of the battery. All of that uses parts and excavating equipment and transportation costs and all these other things just to make that battery. And there is an environmental cost to that. That, again, a lot of folks that try to politicize this will say, well, it's green. Yet don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain, but it's green. Well, yeah, sure it is, but it's not. And I'll be honest with you, there's, people talk about gasoline being a dirtier alternative, but the infrastructure's there, and the fact of the matter is that there are negative consequences to energy production no matter how you go about it. And you can talk about wind all you like, but the reality is that wind isn't always blowing, solar, the sun isn't always shining. So then you get into nuclear, and then there's this whole different debate when it comes to that. Not really here to chat about that, but I understand where you're talking about in terms of infrastructure and grid capacity. But yeah, the switch won't necessarily be easy, but I will say this. It shouldn't be that hard, though. It'll just be a task that needs to be completed. It's work to get done, but it's work nonetheless. And I'm happy to say that I'm more than positive, plug this thing in before it dies, more than positive that we've got the capability and the capacity to manage that. So, anyway, getting back to it, that's some good points, Ed. Appreciate that. So again, but getting more into the whole idea of it. Let me check in with you guys real quick and see what y'all are saying. Donald Powers checking in saying, yo, Mr. B. Mason, I like it. Michael Coleone is in saying, good evening, Professor Mason, got the arm flex. I like it. PBR Doug saying, hi from Charleston, South Carolina. Got the flex in the fire. I like that. Donald Powers said, I drove a Tesla wickedly quick. Yeah, it will. And guys, I'm telling you, for you guys that haven't driven one yet, it will absolutely redefine your idea of what quick is. It won't freak you out in terms of what fast is, but from 0 to go directly to jail kind of speeds, like 110, 115, actually significant ticket depending on the cop, but, and where you are. But somewhere around that speed, that car is, most of the newer ones are insanely quick, and they're only getting faster. Kobe saying, Subby, I feel EV and gas will be here side by side. The automakers said they will not get rid of their traditional V8s, but will have more EV options. Absolutely. And by the way, let me just tell you this. For any of you guys, and Kobe just sparked a thing in me here. For any of you guys that are hating on EVs, I want to tell you this. CAFE requirements for fuel economy. What CAFE is corporate average fuel economy, CAFE. What that number does every year or every 5 years, whatever it is, there's an expectation that manufacturers raise their average fuel economy. If you like your Hellcats, if you like your GT500s, if you like your ZL1s, then you better start French kissing every EV that manufacturer makes on the showroom floor in front of God and everybody, because it will be because of those EVs raising the CAFE standards so that those manufacturers will have the window, the fuel economy window, to make those Hellcats, GT500s, etc., those big horsepower supercharged V8s or big horsepower NA V8s. Without the EVs coming in and basically creating a buffer for that fuel economy, those cars wouldn't be able to be made, because even with paying gas guzzler tax, you would still be faced with a hit to the CAFE standard that the manufacturer may not be able to absorb. So that's a strong point that I want you guys to remember. And again, this is where a lot of folks were. I mean, I was looking at it just thinking, man, I understand there's going to be a lot of initial cost. There's a lot of cost for an EV. You've got some tax rebates and things like that you can take advantage of. But still, the overwhelming idea here is that when you're talking about the EV, you can't look at it from just, well, the EV is going to take over and that sucks. And then people they start trying to throw politics into the mix and all of that, where it just doesn't really need to be. If you look at it for what it is, accept reality for what it is, and understand that this is a way to keep getting that innovation, to keep getting the big horsepower, big torque V8s that we all know and love, you might just have to have a freaking, EV to scamper you back and forth to your moneymaker, and then have your hot rod in the garage just like all the rest of us. And by the way, if you're only driving about 40 or 50 miles round trip every day on average, that EV is going to be pretty damn nice, because that EV, you just get on your phone, boop, turn the heater on, it warms up, sits there, doesn't make any noise. You get in it, you drive it. There's nothing to break, realistically, at least by comparison. You might find out that you fall in love with the thing pretty quickly. Now, I get it. Some folks, it wouldn't make any sense. Guys like me, I wouldn't really be able to use an EV with all of the driving that I do. It's not uncommon for me to run around 200, 250 miles a day. But for a lot of people, don't have to worry about that. They don't have that concern. So anyway, getting back to it, let's see. Just wanted to make sure that point was made, though, because that's a point that a lot of folks fail to bring up. And if that's the game that is being played, then this is one of the ways that you play the game. You just make EVs. Scavenger 1320's checking in, saying, "What's up, everybody?" Destroyer 1320 saying, "Brother Mason, hope you're doing well." Hope y'all are doing well too. Oh yeah, just a little bit of an update on the ice storm. So we really never lost power. If y'all were on the last live show, we did lose power here at the shop, but nothing. I mean, I finished up the live show literally in the dark, which actually wasn't too bad because for me, I'm just looking at the screen here yammering on, so it wasn't any big deal to me. But y'all got to live through that with me. But the only things that we got stung with, or I got stung with, was a bad valve on the toilet here at the shop. Yay. Not a bad thing. It's just a little bit of a leak, but nothing. I mean, I just turned the water off. It's not a big deal. The pipes didn't freeze. It was just a coincidence, I think, that this valve went bad. So anyway, I get to fix that. And then at the house, I had an outside bib that I had repaired. And the real cold weather basically rendered my repair a little bit less operable than what it was before. So I had to do a little bit of a mod to this outside bib. You know, these pipe threads are tapered. And so anyway, one part of the tapered end of the pipe had practically rusted off, and I'd put a brass spigot or valve on the end of it. And it started leaking, so I tried to remove the valve and reseal it and put it back on, and it just broke the end of the pipe off. So I just got some 3/4 inch heater hose and a socket extension, and problem solved, at least for now. So we'll let everybody with real problems get their situations under control, and then we'll get some things fixed around the house. But other than that, we're good. Let's see. Scavenger saying, saw the title and had to jump in because I was wondering the same thing. Yeah, so I think a lot of guys, and I'm waiting to hear somebody just tell me, give me a reason why you just absolutely hate the electric vehicle, because I would love to have that conversation. Sovereign Knight saying, hey, B-Makes, what's up, Sovereign? Again, thank you, Ed. Sovereign saying, the part I love about the V8 is the sound, the excitement of explosions, the visceral feel. That's not something you get from electric. Electric doesn't have that renowned presence. True-ish. And this is something that I've been saying for a long time when it comes to the V8s. You know, the funny thing about V8s is that they do have the sound. You can have that exhaust sound that you've been conditioned to fall in love with and know and love, basically your whole life. And one of the things I think that you're going to find is that whine of the electric motor is going to be as synonymous with power and performance and everything else as that V8 sound. And I also feel like it. Okay, so a lot of folks will say, well, I just want to have the sound, and I agree with that, by the way, that a lot of folks are saying, well, I just don't have the sound. I don't have that auditory sensation. It's like I've lost one of my senses. In fact, that's one of the ways I was describing it. I mean, if you ever go and watch a Formula One race, you'll have the sound and everything else, which is about the only thing that really ties you to those cars. And if you ever watch a Formula E race, there's really no sound. You'll hear them, whiz by, but there's really not a sound to them per se. So I get it that you lose a little bit of that feel, but what you can do, and what I'm sure you'll be able to do, is really to an nth degree tailor that driving experience. I mean, just perfectly to your own subjective taste. And I think that with more or less infinite throttle mapping capabilities that you can program into the speed controllers, I mean, guys, the sky really is the limit. I mean, you can just now get to do that with these electric throttles. But now that I'm mentioning the electronic throttle, isn't it funny how so many people were worried that electronic throttles would be a problem? But yet the electronic throttle has yet to be a problem. In fact, if anything, it makes life kind of nice in a lot of ways. So it's change. That's what it is, and human beings are creatures of habit, and they typically don't take very well to change, even when change is clearly better. A lot of folks just don't want to embrace the fact that there's going to be some type of a change. And the way I look at it is, this is a tuning opportunity the likes of which you never see. I mean, the worst you can do is fry a speed controller. And even with that, it's really more battery voltage related in that respect than anything else. So I'm saying throw everything at it. Y'all know what my idea is. We throw capacitors at it and do all this other stuff and have the basically electronic equivalent of nitrous oxide. But anyway, I digress. Someone's saying cobalt is not green. It's one of the materials used in a lot of EV batteries. That's true. Sovereign's saying hydrogen requires energy to create and separate from water. Actually, they don't separate it from water, Sovereign. They actually separate it from methane gas. It's less energy taxing to remove the hydrogen from the hydrocarbon of methane gas than it is to actually use electrolysis on water. Not saying that you can't do it with water, but they use typically methane gas for that. Owen saying, good evening from East Coast, Canada. Good evening, Owen. Glad to have you, my friend. Donald saying, Tesla makes more money selling carbon credits to the big three than he makes on manufacturing cars. Have you seen a Tesla 18-wheeler take off? There's videos of that. Yeah, it's creepy seeing something that's basically the size of a trailer house accelerate like a sports car. Eric saying, I completely agree with Ed. The grid is not there to convert over to EV. Politicians and the news media won't even mention this fact, which is a huge stumbling block. It is, if you look at it from the point of view of the entire fleet of cars today. But think of it like this. I don't know what the amp draw is. Let's say that it's 30 amps. You're charging the thing overnight. I don't know. I'm just using a weird number here, or an easy number for a weird scenario. If every household bought a new appliance that used 30 amps, how would that tax the grid as it sits? I don't know, but I do know that based on current growth and based on current capacity, a significant number of electric vehicles would be able to be powered off of the grid. And so to say that the grid can't handle it is not telling the whole story. I would say that the grid could not handle an entire switchover, and I would agree with that 100%. But if 15% or 20% of daily driving cars were on the grid, I don't think that would be overtaxing the grid as a whole, number one. And number two, again, I'll revert back to my statement about the cars increasing CAFE standards so that you can have the Hellcat or the GT500 or the ZR1, ZL1, whatever it is, CTSV in your garage. So I'm, like I say, I'm a little bit torn, and I get it. Look, I was the same way initially. I was thinking about, from my point of view, I was looking at it from the standpoint of, where are they getting all the material to make the batteries? Is there even enough material in the ground for that number of batteries? And how are they going to deal with the batteries once their capacity drops? How do you recycle that? That's a whole different industry with a whole different energy demand. And that's when, that's what I was looking at. I was looking at it from that standpoint. And again, you have to use intelligent, practical accounting here when you are taking into account all of the environmental costs, upstart costs and everything else. I'll use that as a variable cost. I won't even worry about that because that gets amortized and goes away. But the costing that I'm looking at is really more long-term, significant long-term cost, and not only long-term cost, but impact on the environment when we're talking about the batteries and the motors. How are they going to build those? How are they going to recycle them? How do you rebuild them? How do you refurbish these things? What's the plan? How does this shit work, basically? Because I don't have a clue, but I know that there is a cost there. And initially, those that would try to make this an environmental thing and it's going green and all this other stuff, that is a terrible way to sell it to somebody that actually knows a thing or two about what it takes to bring something from a manufacturing point of view from concept to market. And again, knowing some of the costs that can be incurred with that, I mean, I'm already thinking of just a few off the top of my head. Let's not make it an environmental thing. I guess that's really my point. I don't like having that conversation because there's environmental consequences on both sides, which are very real consequences on both sides. But I have to say that I'm looking at it only as this is a new power plant. This is a new way to put horsepower and torque to the rear wheels. How does that stack up against internal combustion in terms of power, performance, excitement, and all the things that I want to be in, that I'm going to be interested in as a car guy? In other words, how fast can I make this thing go? What can I get away with? What are the limits of this thing before I actually melt something? Eric saying that the grid is not built out in the story. The grid's got, I mean, you can obviously go as high as you need. Speak Freak saying I have to disagree. Driving my Chevelle with the built 468 was like no other. When you get on it, the Hellcat doesn't even give that feel. An EV will eliminate that racing heart you feel from a real V8. You know, there's a lot of folks that are saying that. There's a lot of folks that are, and that's also, by the way, a huge argument for the old school big blocks versus the modern supercharged small blocks that we have and that we're working with today. And I'd have to agree with that. A high compression big block, or even any of the high compression NA engines, they give a feel that the supercharged and turbocharged just can't give you. And most of that has to do with the fact that when you supercharge or turbocharge a vehicle, yes, it makes more total power, but it's a certain feel, it's a certain crispness that you lose. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've got significantly lower compression ratios, like in the Hellcat, versus the naturally aspirated 9.5 versus 11:1, which does make a difference there, or significantly lower timing to deal with the added cylinder charge. In essence, it's like just driving a really big engine. A car with a really big engine makes a lot of power, but just has low compression. So, but there's always going to be folks that want that feel, that want the sound, that want everything that goes along with a big internal combustion engine, or they want the rush of the supercharged stuff. Get it 100% on board with that. But again, to keep those cars in the stable, as CAFE standards are steadily increased, we're going to have vehicles like EVs to be that stopgap measure from internal combustion to EV, and to make that CAFE, basically that CAFE number high enough to where you can then absorb some of that cushion with one of these hot rods. Uncle Steve for saying I'm fine with EVs. It's the fanboys I have a problem with. The whole kill all internal combustion engine vehicles is stupid. Both internal combustion engines and EVs can exist together and it's fine. Well, the funny thing about it is you're exactly right. I mean, I'm looking at this just as another power plant. Okay, so let me ask you all this. Let me go full stop and let's have a little bit of a thought experiment here. If I were to say that instead of EVs, we're talking about turbine engines instead. And the turbine engine, you're going to have two different variants of the turbine engine. One of them is going to be like the original Chrysler turbine powered car. It's going to drive a prop shaft that's going to go into a transmission, probably out a transaxle, and it's going to power the car just like a normal internal combustion engine would. Via a power train. In other words, engine, transmission, prop shaft of some type, and then out to the rear wheel, some way, shape, or form. But it's going to basically be an internal combustion engine still. It's just going to be a turbine. And those turbines are going to be horsepower corrected, because there's an RPM range that'll just blow your mind with that. But they're going to be horsepower corrected to roughly 400 horsepower, give or take. Or you're going to have a turbine engine that is going to be a true hybrid system just like a locomotive, where the turbine powers a generator that powers, that also charges batteries, but also is direct power to a bunch of some DC motors or something like that. Basically just like a locomotive does today. Would we still have this same argument? Would somebody say, there's no way I'd drive a turbine car, even though you can run them on anything flammable? Anything, practically anything flammable, you can run in a turbine engine. And these turbine engines are, they have hardly any moving parts. There's nothing really separating it from the turbine engine that powers the helicopters flying over your head or the jet that you ride back and forth to Vegas on. Super reliable, and again, the big loss here is that you won't have a V8 sound. Would that be a problem? It's just weird. You start to get into these thought experiences, and you go, okay, well, it's still internal combustion, but it makes this whirly sound. It does that. Basically, it's like having an electric motor. So again, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. At what point is it just no longer acceptable? Is it V8 or nothing? Is it internal combustion or nothing? Or is it something in between? And again, I have to agree with Uncle Stinkford. I'm not really big on bashing something just because it's new. Obviously they can exist together, and obviously there's pros and cons to both of them. I would hope that, if I needed to get on a plane and fly somewhere, obviously that plane is not going to be an electric vehicle. But at the same time, if I just need to run into town, it makes it kind of nice not to have to stop and get gas. It makes it kind of nice to just be able to get in the thing, turn the key, back it out of the garage, and away you go. There's no warm-up time. There's no anything like that. Plus, if it's if it's really coming down to it, you don't have to worry about fuel quality or anything like that. Although modern cars really don't have the same issues with modern fuel injection that older cars with carburetors have. Which, by the way, sidebar, I have watched more YouTube videos and talked to more guys about carburetor tuning than I ever thought that I would ever have to do. It's stuff that I haven't even thought about since. I haven't thought about this stuff in probably carburetors. I haven't thought about carburetors really for the last 25 years of my life. So anyway, I'm going to have to get really good because Sierra may be coming back next week. So we'll see. PBR saying EVs will generate a different type of gearhead. People will be jailbreaking software and features. Oh yeah, for sure. I'll be one of them too. I want to be the first or second guy with my hands on some type of a bit of tuning software ready to go. Let's see. What's Summer Night saying? Let's see. Cool. Didn't know that. Cool. Good deal. Kobe's saying you're exactly right. People don't like change. Being a firefighter, I heard at that around the kitchen table all the time. Hate the way things are, and I hate change. It's a firefighter saying, absolutely. Got a firefighter in the family, as a matter of fact. Thank you for your service. Haha's checking in saying, can't wait till electric crate motors become mainstream. They will too, by the way. Goldberg's checking in saying, long time listener, first time chatter, have a 20 scat shaker manual. Very nice car. Is it worth getting a pedal box for a manual? Yes, it is. So Sean E ran a pedal box. Basically, he had the same car that you have. Saying, absolutely love your channel. I could listen to you talk about pencils. Sell me this pen. So yeah, you can. In fact, Sean loved his on his 6-speed Challenger. So yeah, absolutely, you can run one on the car, and it'll do the same thing for you that that they do for any other car. It just makes life a little bit easier. For some guys launching the car, just driving the thing around makes it a little bit more drivable. If you want it to chill out a little bit, you can dial it back. There are some that told me that they like the pedal box more than the pedal commander. I'm not sponsored by any one of those companies. So do your research. I looked into the pedal box. Looks like a pretty legit gadget. So take a look at that one. And I think that one's actually got an app you can put on your phone, and you can just adjust it from your phone as opposed to just the clicker. I think it has a clicker too, but I don't know. I like them. I had put pedal commanders on my E63, buddy of mine's E55. I'm sorry, not E55. A 550 BMW. The Range Rover had one. Several others. I mean, and again, they're easy to install, easy to take off. They're just a signal intercept, so it's not going to hurt anything to have one. And I'd say, yeah, go for it. I think you'd like it. Sovereign Knight's asking, how much does a typical AC draw? More than 30 amps? If everyone was charging their vehicles, would it not be similar to people using AC in a heat wave? Sovereign Knight saying rolling blackouts. Strain on the grid. You know, that's kind of what I was saying. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what this little window unit over here at the shop draws. Certainly isn't much. Actually, let's find out. There's a tag on there. I'm going to see if this thing says what kind of amp draw it's got. Hang on, let's see. No, it doesn't say. Anyway, it doesn't say on there how, but it's just like a, I don't know, if you take the sticker off, you're going straight to hell, one of those things. So, Kobe saying, make it look cool and I'll drive it. Absolutely. Let's see. Oh, Donnie's saying, I'll worry about battery degradation as well. Spec for the Teslas, it's a lot lower than many think. I can link a report if anyone is curious. Yeah, I think there's quite a few reports out there on basically just the battery degradation over time. I don't know really what they're good for. I know this is not going to be accurate, but I'm going to throw this number out there just because it's what I remember. I believe the batteries are good for 8 years. Now, I don't know what good means in that statement. I don't know if good means that they are going to be, I don't know, capable of sustaining 90% capacity, 80% capacity. I don't know. And I also don't know if that, how good it is based on discharge cycles, heat, weather conditions. All of that can have an effect on battery longevity. So taking that for what it's worth, if they're good for 8 years, okay, maybe, but I need to know what the procedure, what the energy cost is for revitalizing those batteries, for harvesting the vital components out of the batteries and making them capable of basically recyclable, or the recyclability of them, and making them batteries again. What does it cost to do that, and what's the procedure? I mean, look, if it involves, you know, some kind of a ridiculous energy investment to do that, that would obviously make it less attractive. And it's those types of energy costs that are always overlooked, man. I mean, and environmental costs, mind you. And I don't like getting into the whole environmental segment of that, but it's those types of odd costs that people like to conveniently ignore when they're having the conversation. Ken say what's irritating is that EVs pay way less in registration fees and they get premium parking spots. Might be a good reason to get one. Cody's asking, which is better, a Whipple or a Hellcat Supercharger on a 5.7 liter Hemi? I would say go with the 5.7. I'm sorry, go with the Whipple on the 5.7. You know, the smaller Whipple, the 2.9, it's a good unit. Go with that. I know a lot of folks have been going with the Hellcat unit, but you can buy the entire kit from Whipple, and it's a little bit easier. The Whipple is going to be it's about as efficient as the IHI. So if I were putting a kit together, I honestly would bypass both of them and just go with the E-Force. I'll be real honest with you, especially with that Maggie 2650. You get the best of all worlds, and it's super clean install. So a little bit soft on the tune, I will admit, but the Maggie in that kit is what I would put on any of the 5.7s, and it'd be the first kit that I would ever recommend. Like if I were putting one together, putting together for a customer or for my own vehicles, that's the first kit that I always recommend. And again, a lot of that has to do with my own personal experience with that, with just driving those cars and dynoing those cars. Oh, Ed, thanks again, buddy. I appreciate that. Saying future fuel economy and emission standards may make the vehicle you prefer now unavailable in a few years. Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's why when I look at EV vehicles, which is a total redundant statement, if I look at EVs, the way I see them is not only for the power that I think that I can get out of them and the fact that I want to be on the ground floor when it comes to tuning those things, if, or I should say when that becomes a thing. But what I'm looking at them as a kind of a supplement to the ICEs, because with the EV, now I've got more cushion under CAFE standards to have that Hellcat, to have that GT500 or ZL1. Now you can keep making those because you're still falling within your CAFE window. Whereas if you didn't have those vehicles, then you wouldn't be able to meet those CAFE standards. So that's one way that I see them. And another thing is, obviously, again, there are scenarios, there are areas where an EV absolutely makes sense. So, all things considered, I would say that they can work in concert with each other. This is the other thing. I am not an either or guy. I do not see the world as that absolute, because the world is not that binary. So I see this, as an added member of the family, and you're going to have a hot rod version and you're going to have an economy version, the same way that you have hot rod versions of internal combustion and you have economy versions of internal combustion. Each has their place, and each has an equal share in stake in the garage, because you need both of them to make, sometimes to make it work. But good point, Ed. I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you very much again for the contribution. Let's see. Getting back to it here. Oh, Sovereign saying, here in California, we've had heat waves and tons of strain on the grid when AC is being used. Would that not play out the same way when everyone is charging an EV? Actually, it won't. And let me tell you why. For the most part, guys are charging, I say guys, people are charging their EVs at night when the grid is not being as taxed. So if you have everybody charging their car in the middle of the day, that may be an issue. But chances are, if you've got an EV, you're leaving the house with a full charge, you're getting wherever you're going with probably 3/4 of a charge left, and you're driving the thing home and you've only got about half of your charge, maybe at the least a quarter charge on the tank. You've used about 3/4 of your range, and now you get to charge your car at night, and you just put it on a timer. You start charging it at 8, you leave for work at 6. You basically have enough charge to get you down the road and get you back. That's, I guess, the idea. That's the Disneyland idea of how this works. Now, I'm sure that there are limitations to that. The house may have to be wired with 220 or some other things, but there's going to be other costs that are going to be involved. But that is basically the idea, that you leave the house with an amount of charge in the vehicle, and you charge it at night when the grid is not nearly as taxed. So, Donnie said, ultimately there are more factors you have to take into account. It's possible to upgrade a grid. It's not possible to replace a non-renewable resource. Good point. Also, you have to think about this. Ken, or Donnie rather, brings up the topic of non-renewable resource, talking about the fuel. So the fuel, by the way, guys, the fuel is the limiting factor for the internal combustion engine. And we're talking gas here. We're really not talking about diesel. I know that you can get a lot of power out of diesel, and I also know that a lot of people blow their diesels up. So let's not really talk about diesels in this respect. We're going to talk about gasoline because that's what powers our sports cars and muscle cars, and frankly, our daily drivers, right? So you are limited in terms of efficiency. In other words, we can talk, and by the way, anything that I say that pertains to power production is directly associated with efficiency. In other words, fuel economy numbers and the like. So if I say that if I have a fuel that only allows me to have a compression ratio of 12 to 1 at best with 93 octane and all of the tuning nannies that I have and lack of timing, by the way, to keep this thing out of spark knock or out of detonation, then what you're really saying is that we are running into a functional limit in terms of fuel economy with the fuel, the actual fuel that we're using. So to say that, you can have an internal combustion engine that gets fantastic fuel economy on gasoline, that's 100% true. But again, the problem is that it's extremely difficult to ramp up compression ratios, which obviously makes more power, but also under light load conditions makes a vehicle much more efficient, or at least somewhat more efficient, to be able to have the conversation of fuel economy and NOx emissions and the like when you start looking at the much higher compression ratios. So again, not only are we limited by CAFE standards here, but the internal combustion engine itself is limited in terms of efficiency just by the type of fuel that it's burning. Now, you can make the change to, like Brazil did. This is what we were talking about the other night. You can make the change to an all alcohol-based fuel, or, like in Brazil, it's either alcohol or it's E25 for gasoline. I'm sure E85 is a thing there too, but primarily E25. Well, that's great, but the only problem is that it takes about 40% more alcohol, like pure alcohol, to run that engine than it would for gasoline. So now you're going to have range anxiety, or you're just going to have to have a really big fuel tank because your range with any of these high ethanol fuels goes down by whatever that percentage is. Like E25, your range goes down about 25%, give or take. On E85, I know that that range is going to be significantly impaired. Usually about somewhere around 25 to 30% minimum is what it's going to go down, because that's the extra fuel that you have to burn just to get the thing to go down the road. So, and yeah, there's lean burn technologies and all that, but the idea here is just that, oddly enough, the internal combustion engine is limited by the fuel that we have to burn it in its efficiency. Ken saying small nuclear power plants like the ones our Navy used on the ships have just been approved for, cool, for utility use. Very nice. Very clean, efficient, and safer than most think. I would say that they would be, absolutely. Giovanni saying, so the EV is promising a better experience more than the V8s. He's saying he still prefers the V8s. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a different kind of driving experience. And it's, until you drive one, it's very difficult to put it into words. It's instant power. It's instant fast. There is no ramping up of the power. Even with something with a positive displacement supercharger that has a torque curve that is very, very, very flat, even then there's a ramp up effect. You don't have that at all with the electric cars. Summer Night saying, he's hanging out with Ken. I hate to say it, but nuclear is the answer. It's clean, can be safe. The potential meltdown and contamination fallout is the issue. But, again, there's potentials for everybody. Every power plant has a potential issue, either real or the risk nonetheless. People are saying, I remember when people were upset about cars converting to engine control modules, ECUs, ECMs. Yep. And now it's common. You're right. People hate change. And what's funny too is, it's every single time there is some minor change. So before it was carburetors to fuel injection, fuel injection's got so many more parts and it didn't work before and all this other stuff. Then it was, it's ECU. What, a computer's controlling this thing? Oh my God, whatever. Your computer goes down, your car won't start. You ever have a carburetor in the middle of the winter? But anyway, and then from there, it was electronic throttles. Oh my God, how do you, that thing goes out, you'll never be able to drive your car. And we got trucks with electronic throttles with over 300,000 miles on them right now in the fleet. Anyway, it just, the list goes on, man. So yeah, anytime there's a change, there's a certain vocal faction of folks that just does not like it, man. And to that, all I can say is, you'll come around. You'll absolutely come around. And a lot of those folks were some of the biggest adopters of those new technologies once they learned the benefits of them. Cody's saying, if I could get a turbine engine to scream at 20,000 RPM like a rotor, I'd be very happy. Actually, the turbines spin at about 120,000 RPM. So that should make you very happy. Some of the lower RPM turbines will run at about 60,000. Scavenger's saying, so far I couldn't agree more with what you've been saying. I need to skip up for a bit, but if you don't make it back, I'll be rewatching what I missed for sure. Man, thanks for hanging out, Scavenger. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. Arthur's saying, I think I can get used to EV torque available literally all the time. That you're driving it around. It's really kind of neat. So here's the funny thing. Think of it like this. It's the EV power is available now, not a lag. It's available now. And when you have the ability to tune the pedal, the speed controller, you can throw everything at that car with just the slightest touch on that throttle. The same way you can with an electric throttle. It's very similar in that respect. And the cool thing about it is that there's nothing holding you back. If you want it to be chill, you talk about the ultimate pedal commander. I mean, this is literally, it's like drive-by mood, set all the interior lights to some really cool, like indigo color, all chilled out. You're just going out on the town or whatever. You don't need the thing to be going all crazy on you. Just chill it out, put it into, nightlife mood, cruise mood, whatever, and just kind of roll out. You want to get crazy, freaking ramp that thing up, and you get 100% of the torque, and it will feed. The cool thing about what people don't really understand is because you have access to 100% of the torque in an unbelievably predictable manner, that opens a door for you that you don't have with internal combustion engine, which is infinitely variable traction control. You can literally put out the exact amount of torque that the tires can handle. And so 0 to 60 times at 2 seconds, like 2.5 seconds, isn't hard to do because it's like dial a torque. Up to a certain speed, those cars at full torque will spin the tires. You just roll that back just a little bit to where there's just a slight haze or just a little bit of a slip on the tire. You're at full traction capacity and will accelerate like that until you run out of torque producing capacity. Now, the downside to electric is that from y'all's point of view, it just drops. You go full torque and then it goes like that. But, if once folks start adding in transmissions and overdrives and things like that to those things, it's going to make life a little bit different because when you shift, you reload the entire system, amp draw goes up, motors make more power, the car starts to accelerate even harder still. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, man, for sure. Let's see. Oh, Sovereign saying if it's 120, probably 15 ounce. Sovereign Knight saying 20 plus on the amperage. Let's see. Sovereign saying there's a thermal management system on the battery, so there is a coolant that has to be serviced whenever that is. Yes, there is. Donnie saying the specific report I'm referring to bases it off of the mileage on the car versus its capacity. Let's see. Oh, Sovereign talking about a new Tesla tabless battery. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on with batteries, I'm sure. Cal is saying, after 2 years of constant back and forth between Mustang or Challenger, I finally went with a 1320 and I'm loving it. So I'll tell you something. Like I said, guys, I got a big crush on the 1320s. At first, I was a little bit critical, mainly because I had an SRT and I loved my SRT, and it was kind of a bummer when the 1320 was released that they didn't add power to it or didn't do a lot of things to it that I thought they really should have done. However, after spending all the time that I have spent with Ray's 1320, I got to tell you, man, that thing is a freaking riot on the street. And even with the Nexen drag radials, those things are really good on the street. So I don't know. I've become a big fan of the 1320 ever since then. Cody saying, for sure, the 5.7 has always intrigued me since the early Rams to now. And as much as I want a 5.0 Mustang, I'm getting tempted to get a Charger RT. Well, it depends really on what you're looking to do with it. The Charger RTs are nice. They're a lot of fun. They sound good. They're not going to break the bank. You are going to be limited if you're looking at that vehicle versus a Mustang, though, in terms of performance. They're just not going to be at the same level. But man, they run good. They sound amazing. And I got to tell you, they've got a lot of room in them. So, and really, a Charger versus a Mustang, you can't really compare the two cars. The Charger is a 4-door sedan. The Mustang is a 2-door pony car. I've said this over and over and over again. You could have one of each of those cars in your garage and have bookend performance, torquey down low, but with a Charger, you get the added benefit of 2 extra doors. I don't know. You can't really compare the two. It's just whatever fits your needs the best. So, if I were to have a car as opposed to a truck as a daily driver, I'd have the Charger, no doubt about it. 4 doors, comfortable, real solid car to drive. And I happen to like sedans. So, I would definitely go with the Charger. If it's something to play with, then I would just, go with the Mustang. Anthony's saying, congrats to Catalyst, very much. DRT saying, Catalyst, how do you like it from a dead stop thinking of building and ordering a 1320? I'll answer that. They're awesome. And I'll even go so far as to say this. One of the most endearing memories I have is myself and Ray, we were in his car for about 2 hours, making hit after hit after hit, 2 grown-ass men laughing like a couple of teenagers in this thing, playing with the race pages, seeing who could get the quickest ET out of the car. And it, you still have to drive it. You can't just watt the throttle. You still have to drive it. But the thing is that it's a great training car, especially on the street. You can practice launching that thing over and over and over and over again, and it just takes it, man. It's such a neat car, and I love them for that. So anyway, you're going to love it. Riv saying, what up, B? We got a track rental going for next month. Very nice. I think it'll be my first time running on a track with good prep. Yeah, it'll spoil you too. Cody's saying the scariest launch I've been in so far is from WRX STI. Those all-wheel drive cars are no joke. That's right. They are nice too. Carl's saying, nope, can't get on board with electric unless gas becomes illegal. No sound equals no soul. I like it, but I don't know, man. I think Lincolns have a lot of soul, and you can't hear those things until they run over you. Anthony's saying launch a fast snowmobile. Anthony's saying, guessing a lot of guys don't play in the snow here, but if you ever get a chance, get on a big boy sled. I've always wanted to play with one of those snowmobiles. Giovanni's saying, shoot, I'm 24 and they start all this electrical things. If the computers are enough stress just to tune the sports cars enough. Yeah. It'll be pretty cool though. Sovereign saying, I had the privilege of driving an all EV Fiat 500e. I'll admit that instant torque was fun. Being the first to leave a stoplight is intoxicating. So that's what a lot of folks are going to find with these EV cars, is that even the little ones, the runabouts, are quick. They're darty. They're real spirited to drive. And I don't know. I think that it's just like anything else. Just like anytime there's change, there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. But I would go so far as to say that once you get used to the idea that, you know, you're living in concert again with EVs, I think it's going to become pretty clear that in certain circumstances, it's a lot nicer to have an EV on tap. And, you know, I've seen guys go back and forth with some of the Teslas going from Houston to Dallas. And that's kind of a stretch. That's about 250 miles. And, you know, they get to where they're going and charge up when they get there, I guess. But I've seen them making the trip and they really weren't having any issues, I guess. So there is that. But let's see. Sovereign's shouting out at Rift. Cal is saying, talking to Donnie, saying you get a lot of bang for your buck with the 1320. It gives you a nice canvas to work with. So what I'll tell you about the 1320, and then he's Speed Freeze asking, is just curious, what is the difference between the 1320 and the Challenger Scat Pack? So the 1320 has got revised suspension. It's got a drag mode. It's got there's basically you can order it with a rear seat delete. You can order it with a passenger seat delete. But it's primarily just springs and suspensions suspension programmings in the drag mode. It's a little bit more optimized for the drag strip and for playing around, you know, on the street for best traction. I can tell you that what's the difference between the two? The difference between a Scat Pack shaker and a 1320 at the drag strip is 1/10 of a second. And I know this because at the track rental, Mrs. X's car went 11:52. The 1320 went 11:40. Racer X and I both ran Mrs. X's car, and we both ran 11:57 in that car. So, you know, there's about 1/10 or 1/10.5 difference between the two. And I think some of that may boil down to weight. But that Scat Pack shaker did have the passenger seat out and was on a drag pack, whereas the 1320s were as delivered, however, did not have the passenger seat in the car. Both of them are rear seat delete cars. So tit for tat, 6 to 1, half a dozen to another in terms of weight. But the 1320 was able to get out and you know, basically get out there and run those 1140s. So there's that. The 1320 is a neat car. They come from the factory with Nexen drag radials all the way around the thing, which I found to be kind of weird until I drove the car. And then the Nexens at that power level ain't that bad. So I got to say that all in all, I really thought the car was fantastic, and thought even more of the car when, you know, Ray and I were able to take that thing out, and in the as delivered form with he and I both in the car, we were running 12.2 and 12.3. He was able to get a 12.1 out of it at some point. Keep in mind, the car barely had any miles on it at all. But we were running it with the Nexen drag radials at as delivered pressure, which was 32 PSI. So take that for what it's worth, but we were just having a ball playing with the thing. And I think that in and of itself speaks volumes of the car. Now, no, you're not going to win any roll races with it, but you're not going to win a whole lot of roll races with any of the Mopars because they're shaped like a brick and they make a bunch of power down low at the expense of power up top, because you've got to get that barge moving. But the old adage, you got to catch them to beat them, and that's what you got to do with the Mopars, and it's tough to catch a Mopar, baby. So there's always that to consider. But in answer to the question, those are the differences. There's your ET differences, and of course the just the exclusivity of having a 1320. Sovereign saying there are a couple of times that Fiat 500e left us stranded though due to inverter problems. That sucked. Saying that was a recall. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of that happening. Well, what's funny is that I used to see the Tesla Roadsters talking about leaving you stranded. So when I lived in NorCal, I didn't live that far away from Menlo Park, and which is where I believe that's where Tesla was at the time. Anyway, you would always see the Roadsters on the side of the road smoking, and part of it was because guys were taking those things out and just beating the living hell out of them up in the canyons, and basically freaking smoked the speed controller on those things. So, but yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of some development growing pains. Donnie's saying, I've done most things I can do to my RT, naturally aspirated, excluding stroker. I'm torn between boosting it or using that money as a down payment for the 1320. Depends on what you're doing with the car. I'll be real honest with you, man. If you've gone this far with your car, it's going to depend on how deep you are into paying the thing off. If it's paid off, it's tough to beat the E-Force kit. I'll be honest with you, but I don't know that your boosted 5.7 would be able to really have an answer for the 1320 on a drag strip. It'd be close. And of course, there's always building up of the 5.7 that you can do and all of that. But to give you an idea, this was with the older compressor though. The 5.7 would make, I'll put it to you like this, it would make right at the same horsepower with just a little bit more torque. We're talking maybe 10 foot-pounds more torque than a 392. Low boost, a good tune, not nothing like it. We're not talking about kitchen sink throwing at this thing or nothing like that. Stock tune, it wasn't like that. Stock tune, it was making about, I'd say about 10 or 15 horsepower less than a 392, typically like around right at 400 horsepower to the rear wheels, which isn't bad. And like right at 400 foot-pounds of torque. With a revised tune, it'd be like 430 more or less to the rear wheels, to give you an idea. So, let's see. But that 1320, man, I mean, if you're having fun with the car and you want to get really good at launching a car, that 1320 will teach you a lot about how to drive that car, or how to drive a car in general at the drag strip. Uncle Secret saying EVs may be spirited to drive, but so's a Miata 3 with a nice exhaust. They do not sound bad either. I've owned 2 of them. Mazda 3, you know what's funny is that back in the day, God, what was it? It was the Mazda, was it the Mazda 3? Which was more or less the same as the old Ford Probe GT. So when Ford and Mazda were doing their thing, those things were a lot of fun. I actually had a Probe GT. I like that car. Let's see, Riv saying out with Sovereign Knight saying 6.4 is the motor to beat. That's probably going to be my favorite. It's tough, man. I'll tell you something. The 6.4 is a real hard engine to beat because it really does a good job of making power everywhere. Now, granted, it doesn't make power up in the stratosphere the way that a Coyote does. And it really won't drive much past about 6,200 RPM the way that the LT1 will. But man, just in terms of being a really good, fun, just sharp street engine, that 392, again, is really hard to beat. I mean, look, you're talking about an engine and transmission combination that from the factory will propel 4,500 pounds into the 11s. Certainly 4,400 pounds with driver, 44 to 4,500 pounds. It will absolutely get that thing into the 11s. So, man, I got to tell you, that's a tall order, and that engine will do it. So, Gotta say I'm impressed with it. Cody's saying no Mopar is going to win in a roll unless it's a Trackhawk. Trackhawk's the answer to everything. Trackhawk's pretty badass, I gotta admit. Jazz Hellcat saying, nope, my red eye eats Trackhawks in a roll race. Trackhawks are a lot of fun. I remember the old SRT advertisement, something along the lines of 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or something like that, or 6 seconds in the rain. I always thought that was kind of cool. Alberto's asking, hey, be a little bit off topic, but would you trade a 6-speed 6.1 Challenger for a 6.4 Challenger auto? Yeah, if it's an 8-speed automatic, yeah, I would absolutely do that. Absolutely, I would. And I drive it. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm not talking about drive it at wide open throttle. Don't hoon the thing. Hit it at about half to 3/4 throttle. And just surf the torque wave of that 6.4 through the 8-speed automatic. And then get back into your 6.1 and tell me what you think. I have a feeling you're going to come away from the experience with a completely different perspective with the automatic. I know that a lot of guys love the 6-speed Challengers. I'm kind of one of them. As a matter of fact, y'all know the story when I worked for Alex, where you had, this very short list of cars that you remember and that you wish never left the shop. Like if you could only adopt them and bring them home, right? One of them is the silver D100. You'll see it floating around Instagram every once in a while. I got to play with that truck before it had the interior finished out or anything like that. It was basically just the D100 with the wheels on it, with the 6.1 and the nag one in it. I think it's got 390 gears in it, or 370 gears, can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I got to play with that truck. And I mean, that engine in a truck that weighed probably no more than about 3,500 pounds was a freaking riot to drive. Didn't beat on it, just drove it. And it was just so lively to drive. TTS, who put that thing together? TTS? God, it's been a while now. Anyway, there's that thing. And I even said, look, this guy ever wants to sell a truck, call me. The other one, it's a 2014 Challenger, 6-speed car. I don't know what it was about that car, but it was just right. That's the one that we put the Supercharger on. And I absolutely loved that car. And I didn't love it because it was fast. There's different levels of fast. It was just so happy. It was just a perky little car. It's just, I loved driving it. And that car felt like it was a lot smaller than what it really was. But I mean, it's one of those things where a car's sitting there, do I grab the keys and just do a load test on it? I mean, it was just one of those deals where I loved that car. And there were a few others that fall into that category as well. But, for the most part, it was always, kind of the weirder cars that I really loved. And this one was white with red stripes. Like I say, awesome car though. So, Rift is saying, Alberta, yeah, I love my 6-speed ProCharge 6.1, but it's still not as fun as my Hellcat. Yep. Donnie's saying, yeah, it wouldn't be only boost. It's got full bolt-ons and a cam, making close to 440 wheel SAE corrected right now. I just feel that a blower would be more fun on the highway than a 1320. And absolutely, you're 100% right. It would be. If you're at 440 on a dyno jet, to give you an idea, most 6.4s are 450, 440, mid fours. Some are 430. It just kind of depends on where they fell in line in how the dyno is reading. But the ProCharger would be more fun on the freeway, no doubt about it. In fact, that's about the only place the ProCharger is more fun. So if that's what you're into, bro, then that's the direction I would go, man. Just ProCharge that bad boy and let her eat. So, Rip is saying Andy has a built 6.1 as well. Yep. Ken saying, when my SRT 392 in bad DA got gapped by a Tesla S, I traded it for the red eye. Yeah. Tesla S has a nasty habit of making people do that. Cal is saying, is adding a cam to a 392 going to give it one cross-country range anxiety? No, you put the right cam in it and it'll actually do really well. Just don't go crazy with cams with these Hemis. They don't like it. You'd be surprised. Less is more with cams for these Hemis. They're still engines, right? I mean, they'll act the way that the cam tells them to act, but the reality is that I've driven some real dogs cammed 392s, by the way, and it's just a real shame because, you know, you want to get in the thing, you want it to hit hard, and you want it to run a certain way, and they just end up not doing that. There's very few cam 392s that I've ridden in or even heard about that I was impressed with. Rip saying, I had a Mazda 2.5, and it was one of my favorite cars. In fact, it was the car that got me into modding. Very cool. Saying, then I got a Mazda 3 Speed, and it was definitely a very zippy car. Yes. Well, the Mazdas were always quick. Cody saying, for me, it would be a Neon SRT4 and a Caliber SRT4 that I want to keep. Dude, you know, y'all know how much I like the SRT4s. Sovereign said, oh, hanging out with Cody. Before the SRT4, there was the Sprint RT. That was quick back in the day. And then you also had the Omnis and the GLHs and the Daytonas that were pretty quick, preceded by the ES platform, which would have been the Dodge 600, which is what I had with a 2.2 liter turbo. Trudy's checking in saying, I've kept telling people to enjoy the era of modern gas cars. In a few short years, soccer moms everywhere will be destroying any gas car at stoplights, getting their kids to soccer practice. That's kind of an unfortunate side effect to these EVs. They, again, you can program them to, I mean, and you can have like a gas mileage type of tire on there too. And you can program in wide open throttle where it will run just at the limit of those tires, given the conditions too. It'll run just at the limit of those tires right up until they are at max torque for whatever speed that they're going. Ripped is asking, how much of a difference would going from my 305 4517 to a 315 5017 make? Well, 315 5017 is about a 29-inch tall tire, if not higher than that. Actually, 315 4517 is, I think, 29-inch tall. How much of a difference would it make? Well, in terms of traction, quite a bit. I mean, you're going to have a larger footprint. Now, you're going to need a 10-inch wide wheel at minimum to get the most out of that tire. But I'd go so far as to say that it would, if nothing else, give you the opportunity to, I don't know, do a little bit better on questionably prepped tracks. On a well-prepped track, you don't want to go, I don't think, too far away from the 305/45 or the 28 10.5 size tire. A lot of guys are going mid-9s with that setup with no problem. The other issue with 315/50 is going to be clearance. You're going to be having some clearance issues with that, no doubt about it. So unless you want to get real friendly with a 5-pound sledge, I would suggest sticking with the 305/40s. And again, you know, you go with a set of Hoosier DBRs at the track, you're going to be able to hook up with those. There's plenty of guys that have gone some pretty deep numbers with those tires. So, Rich said, I think the bigger sidewall would definitely help with launching. It only helps if you're having significant issues with the 305/45s. And again, those tires aired to 22 PSI have held mid 9-second passes, and they're easy to mount. You don't have to beat the living hell out of your fender wells. Maybe some moving around of the inner fender itself, but nothing too major. Cody's saying even minivans are getting faster. Hey, to that point, if y'all didn't see my review of the what was that? van that I did, that caravan that I did. Anyway, that thing was fun, man. And I mean, I was flat footing it through part of that turning, you know, that handling test that I did. Lots of fun, man. And so just know that you can have a lot of fun with stuff, man. And again, it's a lot more fun driving something that's got instant torque. You want to, and again, I always go back to, I always say Exhibit A is my wife's Camaro. That TBI 305 that probably doesn't rev past 4,000 RPM, at least that's what it feels like, because the tach doesn't work. Anyway, that thing is instant torque all the time with no camshaft and heads that don't flow at all, which means that port velocity is crazy high. The thing just runs like, it's basically like driving an EV. A lot of torque down low, and then it just fades off up top. The only difference here is that you can have gears to shift into. But it's just a different driving experience, and they are a lot of fun too. Let's see. Sovereign saying that his boss is going to get one of those Toyota RAV4 Prime XSE models. It's hybrid, looks nice. It's about 302 horsepower between the 4-cylinder and the electric motor. Sovereign saying, it is sad to be only slightly slower than the new Toyota Supra. Trudy saying the only real problem with EVs is that there is no sound. The nerd side of me appreciates the tech on those cars and lower center of gravity. No gears, I think. Yeah, a lot of them don't have gears. It's just a direct drive. Wait, I'll put it like this. Wait until they start throwing transmissions into those things that that'll allow that thing to be in max amp draw for any real length of time. That's what's going to separate the reality of fast versus what have I gotten myself into kind of fast. Because to keep it in that amp range, now keep in mind that will absolutely destroy any kind of range, but I mean, you'll be good to go for maybe 3 hits max before you've got to start either charging it or getting it home. But yeah, I would say that there are ways to really wake those things up. But again, you're looking at battery capacity is one thing. Speed controller capacity is the other, and the ability to keep everything nice and cool. But yeah, the torque capacity of those electric motors is something, and of course how they bring power, you know, how they just are always there ready to go at 0 RPM is just nuts to me. Rips is saying, yeah, I'm definitely going to take a sledgehammer to the inside in order to get the 315s to fit. Yeah, you're going to have to, get ready, buddy, because it's going to be pretty brutal what you're going to have to do to it. Trudy's saying, imagine going to a monster truck F1 NASCAR race that were all EVs. Yeah. I mean, could you imagine? And by the way, talk about an awesome, you wouldn't have to have a whole lot of battery because the capacity won't necessarily need to be there. But do you imagine a monster truck with monster torque like that? That'd be crazy. Cody's saying, crazy thing is that caravan owners like to race a lot of people. I'm reminded, so like the day or either the day after or the third day that I owned my Hellcat, I had an old lady in a caravan hole shot me on a stoplight. She was looking at me kind of, I don't know, had a goofy grin on her face, light turned green, and she went watt with that thing. And basically, I mean, I don't know, Granny wasn't, on the button or anything, but it's like, holy shit, I just got whole shotted by a grandmother. So, yeah, I laid into it and kind of buzzed past her, but yeah, that was kind of funny. So yeah, I've fallen victim to Nana in the caravan putting it on me. Rip saying, with just a 3.1 upper on E85, my Hellcat can run into the 9, so track rentals are the way to go until I get a cage. Actually, with the new NHRA rules, you shouldn't have anything to worry about unless you're running quicker than 949 or faster than 150 miles an hour. So the latest rule is, and I was just told this not that long ago. The 949 number is for the 6-point roll cage, and the 150 mile an hour is for cage and a chute. So again, as long as you're staying just this side of those numbers, it's just another street car. And you got to remember that there are a lot of modern cars that will run into the 9s. In fact, there's more and more every year. So, you've got a couple of Porsches, I think, that'll do it. Just start going down the list of some of the really fast stuff. And then you've got, obviously, the Demon, which is a 9-second car from the factory. Anyway, you get where I'm going with that. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of 9-second cars out now, and NHRA has taken a look at that and said, well, they're also building them a lot safer. They've got traction control, whereas these other cars never did. So they're saying it's all right to run those numbers now with those modern cars. Sovereign saying, yeah, not having a transmission in an EV, it peaks and the power falls off. Yep. Riff saying, so I noticed how HP Tuners has a mode for the red key and one for the black key. My question is, if I change anything in the black key mode with the tune, does it affect the red key tune? Nope. It's its own separate table. In fact, I think you can program your black key to basically just, instead of being a percentage of power, you just put one, just single digit 1 all the way down, and I think that'll make it basically a red key. I haven't ever messed with it because it just never is really on my radar, but I believe that's how you do it. It's under it's on the engine side. Torque management, driver command torque. It's on the left-hand side of the table. I'm sorry, left-hand side of the page, about halfway down on the page, I think, is where you find that table. Hilton Mode say, if I can get an EV truck that sounds like Iron Man suit, I'm in. Cody's saying Grandma has seen and done a thing or two. Yeah, she has. That is nasty. Riff saying, does this new rule when it comes to running a certain time without a cage apply to California also? Yeah, it's NHRA. It applies everywhere. So, in fact, I want to say that the new rules went into effect in January. And we should be running under those same NHRA rules for the 949 and the 150. The 150's always been there. But instead of being 999, the number was lowered to 949. It's the way I understand it. So, yeah, go out there and run 980s, 970s, whatever you can drag out of it. Go out there and run that until your heart's content. They shouldn't give you any static about that at all. Sorry, I'm saying Grandma got run over by a reindeer so many times. She's not screwing around. She's out for vengeance. Nana is out for blood. She was, man, I'll tell you what, she wasn't messing around. That's for damn sure. So, but yeah, no, guys, I thought it'd be kind of fun to, keep, I know it's kind of, in a way, beating a dead horse when it comes to these EV questions and discussions, but I think that as we start to get closer and closer to, and as the years go by, especially over the next 10 years, you're going to see more and more and more of these EVs really coming to the forefront. And I think that as tuners are able to get their hands on these things, as more higher profile versions of these EVs start getting out there, the electricity, electrical, whatever Dodge is going to call their, EV hot rod. As those cars start hitting the market, I think that you're going to see a pretty big dynamic shift into those types of vehicles for performance applications, as well as the daily stuff. And also, like I say, keep in mind, it's going to be tough to get rid of anything gasoline powered. And obviously Dodge will probably be the last final holdout, you know, with GM talking about making this big switch over the next 5 or 7 years, and Ford kind of, I don't know, dipping their toes in the same waters. You get the overall impression that, you know, you're going to have a changing of the guard, I guess, if you will, from internal combustion to EV. But again, internal combustion won't go away permanently. And just think, you know, again, there's been so many examples of change that ended up being such a good thing. And then, you know, guys getting upset that, you know, well, back in my day, it was like a badge of honor. I don't know, I guess is where I'm going with this. And you had people talking about how much of a pain in the ass carbureted cars were to start, and, you know, that vapor locking and all this other stuff. It's like, my God, this shit sounds horrible. I mean, I don't ever want to have to go through that. I mean, with Sierra, you know, with the old fuel system, you know, it's like, damn, you know, that thing would vapor lock. It was guaranteed to vapor lock. So that sucked, you know. So there's all this stuff that you're just like, golly, I don't want to have to deal with that. And then it's fuel quality. And then, you tried to, I remember back in my day, you tuned these things and you blew them up, you know. It's like, you can already hear it. The jokes and the stories basically are already writing themselves, right? So, you know, with the EVs, like I say, you know, you'll be hearing guys say, well, I can't believe they're going to put a transmission in this EV. That's going to ruin efficiency and all this. You can already hear the argument. I can tell you, I can already tell you how this is going to go. You're going to have guys they're going to be early adopters of EVs, and they're going to be saying, you know, this nonsense of, well, in my day, you only had one gear, and you're damn proud to have it. And then go out there and whoop ass on these old gas burning jalopies. And I mean, just start dragging out, you know, these old ass terms from, you know, forever ago, supper and jalopy and cantankerous and whatever. Anyway, Rich saying, that makes me so happy to hear about the new times. I can run without a cage. Now I can put a smaller pulley on. Yeah, you shouldn't run into any issues. And anybody at any track that gives any static for running like a 990 or a 980, it's like, dude, come on, man. I mean, you accidentally run that in some of these cars. So, yeah. Trudy's asking, have you seen any Durango Hellcats? Yes, I have. I have seen one, and it was F8 green. Damn good looking ride. And I didn't see it run at the track, although it was running at the drag strip. This was the night that we had unbelievably horrible. I mean, that's the night that my car went 1040s basically in the rain. It was misting when I went that 1040 at 135 or 136 miles an hour. That was pretty funny. But I don't even know if that vehicle ran. But it's a damn good looking ride. Pictures don't do it justice. Rich saying, gonna go with a 2.6 upper on 85. Should put me around 910-ish wheel horsepower. So that combination on the Mustang dyno would be somewhere north of 750, but not 800. I know that the 275 upper, 10% lower cars all made 800 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Cody's saying, I'm okay with EV as long as there's more charging stations, transmissions, better charging stations, way to keep the batteries cool. So far, none have been solved. They're just getting to it, man. And the funny thing is it's just like any other infrastructure project. It's just going to take time, you know. And again, you know, I'm reminded of the history that I read about with internal combustion way, you know, over 100 years ago, really over 110 years ago, where, you know, just as the gasoline powered cars were getting out and about, the fact that there was only so far you could go until you not only ran out of gas, but ran out of road. So we're in a lot better shape, and we're a lot further along than, our predecessors. Let's put it that way. So we're not saying Dodge Jewel Cat. That's a good one. Let's see. Yeah, the electric Jewel reference, absolutely. Riff saying, I'm curious when they're going to start putting continuous transmissions in high horsepower cars from the factory. They'll do it when they can engineer a transmission that won't explode under high torque conditions. Sovereign saying, CVT, no way they can handle the power. The funny thing is that anything can be engineered. They can engineer them to take the power. The problem is they just haven't. That's the big deal. And I don't know. I have no idea the reasons why. I have not looked into the reasons why. But I know they will handle RPM great. They just don't handle high torque loads that well. Oh, Ken saying, that's great news in the NHRA rule change. They also need to make EVs in their own class for bracket racing. Dude, that would absolutely, if you show up with an EV for a bracket race, it's just, as long as you cut the same number every time, you're probably going to run the same number every time with that car. Pretty funny. Rift is asking, with E85, it will put around that much power down with that pulley. Oh yeah. These are the E85 car. I don't have a lot of experience with the DynoJet cars, or with those cars on a DynoJet. I know they were typically like around. Some of them would be around 900. I know that on the Mustang Dyno E85 275 upper, 10% lower, Bravo package car. They're always like right at that 800 horsepower number. So, but that again, that's on a Mustang Dyno. It reads power a little bit differently. Rip's saying, yeah, CVT, not CVS. Yeah, CVT is something that should have been just been in the shop until they figured everything out. Yeah, that's kind of the funny thing, is that it just they never really got it right. But the funny thing about it is that I was in Dalton, Georgia on a business trip, and I was given one of these Nissan little SUV things with a CVT. I didn't really know that it had a CVT. I thought I blew the transmission up in it, but then I quickly realized what I had. That thing was a lot of fun. I drug that thing out, hit some back roads with it, and you just flat foot it, keep your foot on the floor with it, and just modulate your speed with the brake. And I was having a lot of fun with it. So there's that. Some are saying it's clear that Nissan CVTs are junk. Can't say for Toyota. Yeah, I don't know. Rich saying, it seems like EVs are great for 8th mile, but not very good in the quarter. That's kind of true. And until they start getting their powertrains sorted a little bit differently, that will be the case. But just like with anything else, you got to catch them to beat them. And man, I got to tell you, on streetlight to streetlight drag racing, they are practically untouchable. So I get the whole quarter mile thing. I get the whole roll race thing, and everything's got its, every platform has its own wheelhouse. I know what my Hellcat is good at, just like I knew what my Z06 was good at. So I guess the point here is that everything has got a place where, a fight that it can win in, so EV, it's going to be an 8th mile ripper, out, on a quarter mile track. They still do really well. It's just that after about the 900 foot mark, they just really run out of steam because they run out of gear. They just simply, they accelerate, and then they just run out of gear. If there were just another gear or 2 or 3, it'd be a completely different story. Cody's saying Toyota CVTs so far have been pretty good. Then again, it's Toyota that they make everything reliable. That's true. Kind of over-engineered. Riff's saying they just don't have the top end, talking about the EVs. Yeah, but a lot of that is, as these EVs are developed and more dollars are put in not only development, but engineering and transmissions and all of the things that are going to come with that. As they get better, they're going to continuously get better and better and better still. And I'm telling you, oh my God, I mean, could you imagine an EV with, the gear capacity of like a 6-speed automatic? Gotta be crazy. It'd just be absolutely nuts. Now, the only downside, so you have to remember, EVs, electricity is a little bit different though, in that if you have a high load or a higher load, you're always going to have a higher amp draw. You would think that that's like duh, right? But think of it like this: internal combustion engine with an overdrive is just barely turning the motor. The motor is barely turning over. It's making just enough torque to overcome wind resistance and everything else. But an EV with that kind of load may have a higher amp draw. I'm not an electrical engineer. I know a little bit about how that stuff works, but I can just imagine, however it would work to get that EV to run some crazy numbers with a transmission. It'd be pretty sweet. So, Sovereign saying, my brother-in-law had a Nissan with a CVT and had nothing but issues. Rubber band effect and other weird issues. They are kind of, if you're not used to them, they are a really off-putting driving experience. Ken saying EV Challenger and then call it Hellcat. Yeah. Sam's talking about his Toyota steering play. I don't know. Started talking about Toyotas and Nissans here. Riff saying, what do you think about the new Cobra Jet EV? Well, so interesting you should ask. There's going to be a lot of these skunk work type cars, the EV stuff hitting the drag strip. I like it. In fact, the cool thing about that car and some of these other, more cottage industry electric vehicles, I forget the name of the guy. He's here in Texas. He's got the black electric Mustang. The thing is a flat out monster. I don't know what it runs in the quarter. I haven't really ever kept up with it other than just knowing about it. But when you start to see what those vehicles are capable of, it will really, again, I mean, they do that for marketing to show, look, you can do this with an electric vehicle. You can still get out there and, I mean, kick all kinds of ass with an EV. I'm not sure really what the final, what the final number has been on that car, but I know it hauls ass. No doubt about that. Saying it looks really good. Yeah, Sovereign say, I like the sound of Jewel Cat. Very nice. Let's see. Cody's saying, what still blows my mind is a truck keeping up with some modded cars. Yeah, no doubt. Giovanni saying, I'm curious about the maintenance of an EV. I was thinking to go back and try to complete the mechanic diploma, but now they maintain their EVs. Yeah, so one of the big questions has been, what all do you still have to do to an EV? I mean, you're not really changing oil. You're mainly looking at coolant. But you still have driveline components and brakes and, of course, suspension bits that may or may not need to be lubed. But a lot of those maintenance costs go away, and when they go away, the consequences of not maintaining the car go away. And what I mean by that is, soon gone will be the day where, an oil change interval will be something that you even contemplate or have, in the back of your mind. Aside from, keeping your coolant fresh, there won't be any issues with, well, should I change my transmission fluid? It has so many miles on it. None of that's going to matter. You're not going to have torque converters to have to worry about that. Or any kind of gearbox for a lot of these cars. And if they do, then it's going to be more of an SMG type, sequential type manual gearbox, I would think, or something at least along those lines. Maybe it'll have a torque converter, maybe it won't. I wouldn't think that it would, because that would kill some level of efficiency. You wouldn't really need it, just a lock up clutch. But anyway, you see what I'm talking about. But there's going to be a lot of stuff you're just not going to have to mess with those cars that will also make them a lot more attractive to folks. Cody's saying the Ford Lightning is one of those or lay the wood to most of the cars today. Yep, I've had 2 of them. I love those trucks. Trudy said, I used to follow that Tesla racing channel guy a few years back, and he would crush souls in grudge matches. I'll bet he would. Could you imagine how quick a stripped down Tesla would be? River's saying, if I remember right, the Ford Lightning was the fastest accelerating car truck at the time. Well, sort of. You may actually be thinking more about the Little Red Express. That was the Dodge truck. The Lightning, I don't think was the fastest accelerating, but it was up there for sure. And like I say, I miss my Lightnings, to be honest. Let's see. Sovereign's saying the batteries, the electric motors, the inverter, etc. The power starts off as DC, gets converted and boosted in the inverter, and then changed to AC and output to the electric motors. Cool. Cody's saying the closest thing to a Ford Lightning is the 5.0 F-150 with a supercharger. So what there was a dealership in, was it Georgia, that was taking the short wheelbase F-150s, 5-liter trucks, putting a Whipple on them. I think it was a Whipple. And they had some custom wheels made that looked like the last iteration of the Lightning's wheels. They're just like a 20 or a 22-inch version of them. Anyway, 650 horsepower, and those things looked the part. I've seen one, but I've never seen one at the drag strip, but I did see one down here, and you talk about a good-looking truck. So, yeah, and that thing, was fast. So, let's see. Sam saying with SRT gone, I believe there will be hypo Dodges and Jeeps, but now I have a feeling the next 300 will be, so, and called the Imperial. So, with SRT isn't really going to be gone, though. That's the thing. You're still going to have hot rod cars. We just don't know what it's going to fall under. What nomenclature will it fall under? But no, you'll still have all of that. I'd love to see them bring the 300 back. Put this, the Aussies and UAE have a direct line of sight to the 6.4 300s, the new ones. We just don't have it here for whatever reason. Cody's saying, and the Cyclone was another bad. Yeah, the Cyclone and the Typhoon as well were pretty awesome. Nuclear Shark saying EVs lose range from day one of ownership. This issue is not being dealt with. Look at the Nissan Leaf disaster and how Teslas lose range with every charge and discharge. After a year of ownership, a Tesla 3 can lose 15% of its range. And see, that's really the idea here. And I know that there's some level of loss. I just don't know what that level is. And again, I'm not really a student of the EVs. I just know that there are, again, a lot of things that have got to get better with them. But I mean, if we're talking about 15% per year, that's a bit of an issue. If it's a 15% and then it levels off at some range, then maybe that's what we look at in terms of the actual fall off. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about that. There's some homework that I need to do myself. Sovereign saying the Leaf was a disaster because it lacked a thermal management system, which killed the batteries, which could be a problem for all of them. Cattle saying, off-topic question, are property taxes high in the Houston area, and how is overall cost of living? So it depends on where you live and in what school district you live in, as far as what your school taxes are going to be. But yeah, typically property taxes are a little bit higher. We don't have an income tax, but we do have pretty significant property and school taxes. Overall cost of living is, again, going to depend on what part of Houston you live in, what are the suburbs that you live in, but overall it's pretty good. It's, I would say that it's easier to live down here than it is in other areas. Sovereign saying, lithium ion is extremely picky about temperatures. True. A lot of folks are moving more to lithium ferrous, the LiFe batteries. And then, of course, LiPo batteries just have a nasty habit of blowing up. So, and nuclear shark is saying what I was saying earlier. Yeah, gasoline isn't going anywhere anytime soon, for sure. Sovereign saying lithium ion batteries degrade faster on a state of charge higher than 40%. It's crazy. Oh, nuclear saying the range issue has been dealt with. Musk says it is heat that kills the battery packs, and the fans, even running at 100% of the time, cannot compensate. Or saying it hasn't been dealt with. Yeah. Yeah, there's just some things that, I mean, again, it's still, you know, this technology is very much in its infancy. And with as much as folks want to believe that, you know, the answer to all things moving forward is electric, well, that's some pie in the sky. That's a pretty crafty way to bullshit yourself into thinking that you're onto something that you're really not. There is no free lunch. And again, I've said it over and over and over again. The fact that this topic has been politicized is embarrassing, because to politicize it and to try to factionalize it is to remove the science behind it. And the science is saying, look, they're still trying to get it convenient. They're not trying to get it right yet. They're just trying to make it convenient. From there, they'll try to get it right. But yeah, there's just so much more innovation that's going to be taking place. And again, in the next 10 years, because this stuff is happening really fast, in the next 10 years, the complexion of that market segment is going to change completely. So be on the lookout for that too. Sam saying, all I want is a Hellcat Pacifica hybrid. Hey, enough people want to buy them, they'll make them. Cody saying, Elon needs to come up with a way to keep the battery temps under control. I'm sure they're working on that. Greg's asking, do you think Dodge will drop the SRT badging on Challengers immediately, or wait until a new model year? No, they'll wait. They'll hold on to that for a while. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to just keep seeing SRT badging on things. I mean, at that point, SRT isn't really much more than just a trim level. So it's the SRT trim level. Ken is saying, once Dodge starts putting SRT car hoods on non-SRT cars, it really hurt the special SRT brand. That's the truth. I will 100% agree with that. Sovereign's hanging out with Cody. Trudy's saying, what discontinued car would you like to be electrified back to life as an EV? Oh, man. What discontinued car would I like to be electrified or come back to life as an EV? Interesting question. Damn. I don't know. Discontinued car would have to mean, you know what? I'll tell you what I would pick. Chrysler Imperial. They're already incredibly quiet. They're already huge cars as it is. I would say the Imperial would be the route that I would go. You could have tons of torque to get that monster out of its own way. And you could put a powertrain together that would make that thing run mid to low sevens in the 8th mile. Yeah, I would go with the old school mid-60s Imperial. Nuclear Shark saying, True Wordsby, there is no free lunch for sure, man. That's the thing. Too many people keep thinking that, you know, it's like that illustration, you know, some guy's got his battery-powered motorcycle plugged into a socket, saying how clean and green it is, not taking into account what it took to make the power to go into that thing, much less the batteries and everything else. There is no free lunch. None of this stuff is clean. Energy production by its own nature is not going to be clean, regardless of what the eventual outcome is, whether that power is produced through the effects of creating hydrogen from methane, from burning fossil fuels to make electricity, whatever that fuel is, coal, natural gas, what have you. Whatever fossil fuels were needed to create the turbine that you're getting it from wind power, or the cells from the solar panels. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. There is no bloodless act when it comes to creating energy. The idea is, in this case, the EV is something that you can, in my opinion, make really go fast. And that's kind of the neat thing about it. Sure, it's in its infancy, but that's kind of what makes it exciting too, is that we're seeing the emergence, or I should say the reemergence of the electric vehicle as a viable transportation appliance, whether it's for playing around with it or for, you know, just going back and forth to work. Cody saying, do I smell an SRT4 comeback? Probably not. Cal is saying a 65 Polera for sure. Sovereign saying there's news of a DMC-12 getting converted to electric. Electric DeLorean would be awesome. Yeah, considering DeLorean's right here in Houston. It's where they are based out of. Nuclear Shark saying Toyota just announced on Friday they are spending $200 million on 4 to 5 new engine plants. Gas is not going away. A penstroke can bring back oil drilling again. Very true about that. Let's see. Cody's got his words on bags. Let's see. Reusable. Nuclear Shark saying there's no national infrastructure in place for EVs. Try driving California, New York in a Tesla. True, until there is an infrastructure available for it. And that's the private sector putting that together, by the way. Let's see, Sovereign Knight's hanging out with Nuclear Shark. Yeah, and that's what I've been saying. No, internal combustion is not going away anytime soon. I mean, like I say, it's long time. But again, you know, this is, and here's the other thing, guys. The market will dictate where this goes. Timeline will dictate where this goes. If this is not an economically or environmentally sustainable alternative, then the market will shun that product and will purchase the product that best suits the needs of the market. So the good thing is that at some point, we'll be able to move past, is this working and has this worked, takes over the conversation, and we can start talking about, you know, what did or what didn't work in terms of trying to put together infrastructure, batteries, lifetime of batteries, and all the other things that are going to be coming into play once the sales pitch wears off and the reality of living with one of these things really starts to take hold. Let's see. Trudy's asking, are hydro and fuel cells the same thing? How come those didn't take off? So hydrogen never really took off. And no, they're not the same thing, because hydrogen being used as a fuel cell is basically, it's a battery generating type of a thing, as opposed to a hydrogen internal combustion engine. The reason why hydrogen never really took off as an internal combustion engine is because of the storage of the hydrogen, not to mention the energy cost to convert natural gas into hydrogen is fairly significant. And you start looking at the savings and it doesn't look as great. Although it is very clean, they have high NOx emissions. So there's that to contend with as well. But all things considered, it's really more of a storage thing than anything else. Let's see. Let me get to a few more of you guys. We're coming up over 2 hours, so I think I'm going to jump off here in just a minute, but let me get through some of y'all's comments. See, Sam's liking the name of Cordova. Cal is saying, am I crazy to think that they're not going to do away entirely with the V8 and just make it more efficient? That's what they will keep doing. So no, you're right on target with that. Cody's saying we're supposed to have flying cars by now. I mean, we do, but most of them have wheelie bars on them. Well, maybe. Nuclear Shark saying, B, what do you think of the fact you cannot drive a Tesla very far in winter with the heater on? Why is no one talking about this? Well, yeah, that's kind of the elephant in the room. I mean, you're range limited by any of the accessories that you're running in that car. And so, yeah, if you got the heater on, you're killing your range. And also, to that point, you know, I don't know if the faster discharge rate is also going to be an issue for those batteries. You know, if they're running the LiFe batteries, maybe not. If they're running lithium ion, that might be more of an issue. Could be something that, you know, the colder temperatures and the need to charge them more often could be more of an issue for the batteries. Don't know. But that's, again, you know, you're ruining your miles per gallon when you turn your heater on in those cars. You know, it's much, or the air conditioner or any other accessory. So yeah, no, that's a good point. Let's see. Oh, Ken's talking about the U.S. has oil as a resource. Europe does not. Part of the political pressure for EVs. Yeah, but there's only so many windmills out there. There's only so many nuclear power plants and coal plants and everything else, natural gas plants. But again, you still have to have some level of infrastructure to take over for those EVs. Oh, Cody's talking about an 8-speed for their 4-cylinder cars. I'm surprised they don't have the 10 speeds. Cody's saying that too. Sarver saying heater drains battery. Heater element is literally a giant resistor. It absolutely is. HU37 saying the only thing Stellantis dropping in the SRT group is that it will go in a direction away from the traditional muscle car. Actually, they're saying it won't do that. They're saying that it's basically they're going to use the SRT engineers to more or less upbrand the rest of the Stellantis group, was the way I was understanding it. But again, you have to remember that the Dodge brand is a cash cow for FCA. The Challenger, the Charger, the SRT powered vehicles and the Hellcat powered vehicles are profit generating entities. I mean, think of it like this. If I'm Stellantis, why would I buy a brand and then gut the brand that is the whole purpose of buying it, whether it's Ram, Jeep, or any of the LX platform vehicles? Why would I buy something that is the whole reason why I'm buying the company and then do away with it? It doesn't make any sense. You use those brands to bolster the rest of the Stellantis group's image. Without that image, Stellantis group is just another, you know, a transportation appliance maker. There's no reason for me to buy a Stellantis car at that point. And HU's 3 saying you'll see cars with engines smaller displacement, emphasis placed on hybrids and efficiency. Some of them they will, because you've got CAFE standards to meet, but you'll still see the hot rods. This is a catalyst saying the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. That's true. Boost Image saying, what tables and HP tuners do I use to tune AFR? Well, to answer the question, in case anybody really wants to know, you go to engine, you go to fuel, you go to power and rich, and then you go to your power and rich table, and then you change that. You take your Your stoichiometric value, depending on if you're in a Hellcat, is 0.722. And then your fuel adder, because it is a FA table, of 0.0175, for example, if I remember correctly, is 0.80 lambda. So anyway, there's your quick fueling tuning tutorial. Nuclear Shark saying, with everyone going EV, what would be incentive to buy the more expensive cars? Well, I mean, it depends on what those more expensive cars are. Scatpack 392 is asking, hey, what's your take on the HRT Stage 2 cam for a 392? It is eerily familiar. I'll just put it that way. So that's actually a good cam. It's a 220/230, if I'm not mistaken. It's not a super aggressive low profile, but it's still a good low profile. And it is right in the middle of the road when it comes to cams for any of the Hemi engines. Works great in a 5.7, works really well in a 392. Not too radical, not too choppy. There are better cams out there, but you would be hard pressed to find a cam that's as well rounded. I had originally put together a cam that is extremely similar to that cam about 4 years ago. And really good cam. It's the cam that is in Quick Brick's car, Racer X's buddy with the Charger. And that cam did really well. I mean, it picks up power literally everywhere across the board. No real lope to speak of, not real racy sounding, but just a good cam all the way around. Again, the low profile isn't super aggressive on the Stage 2, nor would you expect it to be, but I would still run Hellcat lifters, upgraded push rods, and an upgraded spring pack. At least a set of 1515 PSI 1515 springs on that cam. Boosted Hemi's asking, is that for wide open throttle and part throttle? That is for, you've got some transitional tables, but that is for fuel enrichment, which is wide open throttle. I would not mess with the stoichiometric value for those operating systems because it just happens to piss everything off. But just remember, you're dealing with a fuel to air ratio, not an air fuel ratio. So there's some confusion there. Also, don't forget that you still have to factor in the 6% difference that operating system works within, which I still don't understand why it does it. So anyway, 0.075, I believe, will translate into 0.80 lambda in that table. Trudy's saying, in the corporate world, money talks, everything else, including BS walks, for sure. Boo's saying, thank you. Very welcome, man. And with that, guys, I'm going to check out. It is a little after 2 hours into the show. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for hanging out with me tonight. Pretty soon, once it warms up, we will be back in the shop. But for now, we've been hanging out in the office because it's been a little bit too damn chilly. But at any rate, with that, I'm going to close the show. Love each and every one of you guys. Could not do this without you. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Keep wearing your mask. If not for yourself, then do it for others. And with that, that is a wrap. Y'all have a fantastic week. And we will catch y'all on the next one. Stay safe, guys. Adios.